This is Damion Lupo, and you're listening to the Passive Investor Show.
The views and opinions provided on this show are for informational purposes only and should not be misinterpreted as an offer to buy or sell any securities or to make or consider any investment or course of action. For more information, please go to passiveinvestorshow.com.
And now, the Passive Investor Show. Here's your host, John Fortes.
Welcome, PI listeners, to the Passive Investor Show. I'm the Passive Investor Consultant, John Fortes, your host of the only ranked podcast for passive investors in multifamily syndications and real estate funds. Our goal and purpose of this show is to be a resource to investors and help them master their passive investments by beating inflation 1% at a time. My guest today is Damion Lupo. Damion Lupo's mission is simple: to free 1 million people from financial bondage. His unique tool is a fusion of financial literacy and a little-known strategy called the eQRP. That allows investors to control their financial future and get off the Wall Street roller coaster. He's the best-selling author of 12 books on personal finance, investment, and retirement planning. He hosts the Financial Underdogs podcast, has owned more than 50 companies, and is the founder of his own martial art, Aikido. Damion is the CCO of the eQRP company and the lead architect of the eQRP, the Ferrari of 401ks. The eQRP is a unique and powerful system to put individuals in command of their own investments, tapping into the 25 trillion locked away in Wall Street controlled retirement programs. Damion is also a professional investor with decades of real-world experience that started with the purchase of his first rental using a Visa card advance, a move that snowballed into 150 rental houses in less than 5 years. In 2008, he lost a whole $20 million business, only to bounce back and create his wealth in 5 years. Welcome to the show, Damion.
Hey, man, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
There's a lot to unpack there, but I'll let you tell it. Tell us how you got into this and a little bit about your background.
You know, it's interesting because when back in the late 90s, I got a hold of this book before it was this national Oprah event called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I was all excited about what was in there. And it was kind of along the lines of my thinking because I went to college and then got kicked out. And it's because I started a bookstore and they said, no, you're putting the other bookstore out of business. And I said, yeah, but I'm paying for school. And ultimately I ended up leaving a week later, but I did pay for school in a week. So I left there and I started selling some insurance and I read this Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, and a buddy of mine said, hey man, you want to do a deal with me? Because he had read some other real estate books and I said, I don't have any money. I don't know how to do anything. Why are you asking me? He said, man, but you could take a cash advance on your credit card. And I said, all right. I mean, it seemed like a good idea for a 22-year-old. So I took $6,000 out of my account and I went out and closed on a house. And then he said, cool, I'm out of here. And he bailed. And so I got to spend the next 4 months learning how to electrocute myself, get high on paint, fall off the roof, blow out the plumbing in a 1950s house. Like I learned everything in the school of hard knocks. It was crazy. And so that was not passive, by the way. That was active. That was like chaos. And then right after I bought that, a week later, I went to Orlando. So this is like January 2000. And I saw Robert Kiyosaki at a live event and I watched all these other speakers on real estate. I bought every tape they had. I mean, I literally had to buy new suitcases because I couldn't fit all the tapes. We're talking like probably $10,000 worth of tapes. And I listened to all of them and I just started doing what they said. Naively, I did what they said. And, instead of going, well, I'm going to figure out what they're missing. Like I just did it. And it worked because I just kept doing it blindly. And so that was how it started. It was really just a little bit of a vision and dumb luck in being naive enough to follow what they said.
No, I love that because I have a little bit of naiveness in me. And that's what's crazy about it. It's just, you just get curious and just start going without asking the questions, right? So tell us how you started with the eQRP. I mean, tell us how you got into that.
Well, the funny part is that all sounded good with that real estate thing. And I became a multimillionaire in my 20s and I bought a Ferrari because that's what you do when you're 26 and you have too much money and too little smarts and wisdom. So I got Will Smith's Ferrari because I saw Bad Boys 2 about 100 times. And I was like, yeah, I'm Will Smith. I almost got a purple suit. And
Hold on,
then
hold on. You mean Mike Lowry?
Mike Lowry. It's Mike Lowry. Yeah, no, that was definitely my gig. And I was like, I got this. And I kind of just, it was in that space of trying to prove something. And so I spent all this time and money trying to replicate somebody that had $100 million. So that was a little bit of ego taking over. And then ultimately in 2008, that $20 million that I had built up went away, and I had negative 5 million within 12 months. So it went positive 20 million, negative 5 million in 12 months, and massive humbling event. And so I had to do a reset. And that's where the eQRP came into play, because on the other side of that, after I was past denial and pretending it didn't happen, I finally said, okay, it did happen. What am I going to learn from this? And one of the things I realized was I'm not here just to make, create a bunch of pieces of paper with dead presidents and pile them up. Like there's got to be more. And I saw people all over the place, including my parents, playing by the rules for 30, 40 years, waking up one day retired and being broke. And it was because the system, the Wall Street system, is screwing people over and feeding on them because it's feeding them. And I didn't really understand that because I was too busy making money. And when I realized what was going on, I started digging into the system and realized there were some things that people could do they didn't know about. People think that they have to put their 401k or their IRAs into mutual funds or these traditional Wall Street things because they've been marketed to. And the reality is there's a totally different world. It's called real estate. It's called gold. It's called control. And it's done using an eQRP, which is what we created so we can give people freedom and options.
Awesome. Can you tell us what the difference is between an eQRP and a standard IRA?
Yeah. So IRAs are default. It's kind of like you just take what they give you. And so when people leave jobs, 401ks or thrift savings plans, if you happen to be in the federal government or military, you end up with this IRA, and there's a custodian, and you basically get to do what the custodian lets you do. And a lot of the stuff is the same. The big differences are if you say, okay, I want to be a passive investor in real estate, and you use an IRA, in all likelihood, you're going to pay around 37% tax while your IRA is being invested. And people have no idea that's the case. Well, that sounds terrible, but the eQRP is exempt. So big difference. If you want to use an IRA, you're going to pay a third in taxes. If you use an eQRP, you pay zero. And if you're already using an IRA, you simply transfer the assets from the IRA to the eQRP and you're exempt. So that's probably the biggest one. There are other big differences. You can put 10 times as much money into an eQRP, 57,000 per year versus 6,000 in an IRA. You can buy physical gold and keep it yourself. An IRA, you cannot touch it. You have to put it in a vault controlled by somebody else. Lots of different things that are really major game-changing differences. And this is for people that want to be passive investors, people that are, you're listening right now because this is the passive investor show. And so being a passive investor, you got to have the right tool that doesn't take away a third of your money, which an IRA will if you're doing real estate investing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, because we built this show just for the simple fact that passive investors need to understand, learn, grow, and even minimize taxes, right? So that's the whole point of it, by beating inflation 1 percentage point at a time. So real quick, Damion, you mentioned something that about the QRP, the EQRP, right? There's one thing I want to ask about this, and it's how do we get qualified as passive investors?
So as a passive investor, if you want to have certain retirement accounts have certain requirements. An eQRP requires that you have a business. And what does that mean? Does it mean you have to go open up a Jimmy John's shop? No, it means you have to have something. You could have a lemonade store. You could have an eBay store. Really doesn't take much. You could be a doctor working 80, 100 hours a week, and it's really not hard because there's no requirement that you have to have a certain amount of income or any income. You have to have a business that could have income. And once you have that, you're eligible to have a plan. And so it's relatively simple. Most people just get confused by Google because Google is not your friend. Google just confuses us.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say about the differences between an EQRP and a solo K?
Well, there's major differences. The Secure Act in December changed the rules. So a couple of things right up front. One, solo Ks don't have the same liability protections. And if you look at every major city in the country, what do you see on every bus? Hey, if you've had your feelings hurt, let's sue somebody. And so if you don't have liability protection, it's a matter of time. You build up an IRA or you build up a solo 401k, which is just a fancy term for a generic 401k for an individual. And you have one of these things. There are only certain limits in what's protected based on the state you live in. And so you're just exposed. eQRP has protections to protect your money, even if you have 10, $20 million in there, which is something that's important. We live in litigation land. I mean, it's America. That's what we do here. You sue your way to wealth. Unfortunately, it's what people do. So you want to make sure that that's protected. That's a major difference. The other major difference is that with an eQRP, the Secure Act back in December requires you, if you have part-time employees, to include them in a plan. You can't have a solo 401k if you have part-time employees, 10 hours a week, and your plan blows up. So what do? You say, well, I'm not worried. Well, you hire somebody, you've got to convert that solo into an IRA. But what happens if you bought real estate? All of a sudden now it's all subject to UBIT. So it's really a disaster waiting to happen. Solo Ks have turned into ticking time bombs for most people that are doing real estate. They just didn't realize it because the legislation changed and nobody told them.
You literally beat me to my next question in regards to if I hired an employee or I have an employees underneath me. So, I mean, you just beat me to the punch on that one. Now, Damion, what's the difference between profits and contributions in these plans?
So there are limits on how much you can put in terms of, let's say you have 1099 income, or you have a business and you pay yourself a W-2. You can contribute up to $57,000 if you're under age 50. That's a contribution. Profits, like let's say your plan goes out and invests in a syndication and it makes $200,000. That just goes right back into the plan. There is no limit. People say, "Oh, I can only make $57,000 a year." No, your plan can make 10 million a year. We have people that have almost $100 million in their plan. Guess what? They're making millions a year in profits that are just going back into the plan. So there is no limit. It's just a question of how much contribution. Just like with an IRA, you can put $6,000 into it. That's the max you can put in from your income, and then it can grow as big as you can grow it.
What's been the most unique investment you've seen a client make? I say that because we focus on real estate, but I want to hear what you see.
It's funny because I hear what people are doing, and I don't even think it's that crazy. But they're buying coffee farms and cacao, not like coca, which is cocaine. I'm talking cacao, like chocolate. They're buying those things in Panama, Belize. I think that's pretty interesting. People are buying cannabis industry businesses. And a lot of these they're real estate plays. They're dirt. They're growing things. So it's funny how often it comes back to real estate. People do a lot of crypto, so they're buying a lot of Bitcoin, which I think is very smart to get in that game because our money is changing. And they're buying a lot of physical gold and silver, which you get to keep and hold in your eQRP. And I just think that's brilliant because it's real money. So, in terms of crazy stuff, one of the rules you can't do is you can't buy collectibles like a car that you're going to flip, or wine, because the IRS said you just have a hangover at retirement and you'd be broke. So they don't let you do things that you consume, baseball cards. So mostly it really comes down to a lot of real estate, in most cases, real estate and gold.
Oh man, that's pretty cool. I love the fact that it still lands on real estate at the end of the day. It's kind of funny.
Well, and if you think about it, and we've heard this, most people have heard this at some time or in their past, that the wealthy either make their money in real estate or they hold their money in real estate. And a friend of ours, Jim Rickards, who has another book coming out in October, he's written numbers of books, and he's brilliant, probably the smartest geopolitical player in the world, in my opinion, right now. And one of the things he talked about was these really wealthy, like not American families, but like European families. And I say not American because these are families that have had wealth for 500 years. America hadn't even been around for 500 years. So, as a country. So he said these families had three rules. At the very end of his book, Aftermath, he talks about it. They keep their wealth in three things: gold, land, and art. And I thought that's really interesting. So it just, when you're talking about hundreds of years of wealth and legacy, if people are doing that, why aren't we? And if we are, good. If you're not, maybe you should look into doing that.
That's pretty powerful. And thanks for sharing that because, man, that's pretty eye-opening, to be honest. Now, we're in the COVID pandemic, and we're trying to figure out COVID-19. What impact has COVID-19 had on the investment decisions your clients are making?
I think people are looking more at fundamentals, and what they're also realizing is that they need to have smart people around them, because just because something was good yesterday doesn't mean it's going to be good today. It doesn't mean it's even going to work. Here's a good example: student housing. That was one of the smartest, soundest, best profiting, consistent investments that existed. In fact, for years, I said, people would say, "What should I do?" And I'm like, look into student housing. I mean, are schools going to go away? No. But what is going away? Student housing, because students are going virtual. And so you have to be willing to adapt. Well, how do you adapt? You have people around you that are balder and grayer than you are that can help you navigate these things. And that's the biggest thing. A lot of people are just frozen because they don't know what to do and they're waiting for the government to fix it. And I go, that is a terrible plan. That's called smoking hopium. I hope it works out. And that all you're going to do is get high and frustrated. So I think you really have to, uh, in order to get through this thing, you've just got to surround yourself with people that can help you think. Thinking is hard. It's hard work. And unfortunately, if you're watching the media, you're not going to be thinking. You're just going to be reacting.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Now, I want to go back to when we open up an account, right? What's been the average rollover amount you've seen during account setup?
Yeah, I mean, they're all over the place. We have people that roll over 20,000. We have people that roll over, deep eight figures, and it varies. One of the questions people will ask is, well, how much do I need? How much should I like? Does it make sense to do it if I have 10 or 20 or $50,000? And my answer is, I created a $20 million portfolio with a high school education using -6, meaning I borrowed 6,000 to start my thing. And it has less to do with the amount of money you have and more to do with what's between your ears. And what's between your ears is how you look at things and who's around you. So it doesn't really matter how much money. I mean, you could take 10, 20, $30,000 in an account and in 5 years be financially free. I mean, it's really that straightforward. And if you want to be super passive, you can really do that inside of a decade. So I think it's more about what you're committed to doing and you're learning. And as a passive, it's not about abdicating responsibility. It's about delegating it appropriately.
Damion, thank you for sharing that. But what is one piece of advice for the PI listeners?
One piece of advice is get in the game and don't play scared. I think a lot of people play scared and they're doing things way too conservatively. Doesn't mean that you go out there and you speculate on some crazy crypto that nobody's heard of, but it's going to make 12 billion% next month. I mean, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that most people are playing too conservatively. They're just holding cash and they're saying, this is what I'm going to do. This is my plan. The reality is nothing is going to eat you if you make a mistake. Mistakes are how you learn, and we're taught to not make them. And the smarter we are, the more we're taught not to make them because we got smart and successful because we had all the answers. And we should be saying, okay, what am I missing? That's the key. Ask the question, what am I missing, to people that are grayer, balder, wiser, more experienced than you are. And you'll find that there's a whole world out there. But when you have the ego answer, when you know for sure, you're just going to block yourself from the truth.
How can we stay in touch with you? And do you have any upcoming events coming up?
Yeah, best way to stay in touch with me is to connect and learn more about the eQRP, because I share through Financial Underdogs, I share through my different media channels, and you'll know about that if you're part of our tribe. Becoming a part of the tribe is easy if you want, especially if you want to get information about the eQRP. Just grab your phone and text the word eQRP to 72,000, and I'm going to send you a report. It's a 15-page report that sums up the eQRP. And even if it isn't for you, I guarantee you there's somebody in your life that's either retired or lost their job. They're going to have money to roll over, and you can actually be their superhero when you share information like this where they get control. Or maybe it's for you, but just eQRP to 72,000 is the way to get that report, get a copy of the book, and become a part of the tribe so that we can stay in touch and I can keep dropping more knowledge bombs, wisdom bombs, bald bombs on you.
Hey, I always tell investors, it never hurts to have a conversation. You either make a decision after that. Conversations just the starting piece, right? So
That's
reach
right.
out to Damion, start that conversation. I appreciate that. Damion, my favorite question, and it's probably pretty simple. Is there a meaning behind the company name?
Is there a meaning behind the company name? It's really fascinating because the question is, why did Apple become Apple? It's not about fruit. And then some companies, it makes sense. Dell. Why didn't we call the company Lupo? And I just wanted to simplify it. And it goes down. Why is it called the eQRP company? Because I like simple. I think Wall Street complicates things to make people feel that like they're too stupid. And so my job in everything I do is to simplify and make sure that people really feel empowered. So it's not a mystery. What does the eQRP company do? It creates eQRPs. This is our focus, and it's because of the mission to free 1 million people. And in terms of events, yeah, we're always teaching. This is a teaching company that happens to build eQRPs. We spend a lot of time teaching and educating because I can give you a tool. It's like a Ferrari, like that dumbass move I made in 2005. You can get a Ferrari, but if you don't get training, you run into a wall. Ask me how I know this. So it's really about educating people and for you guys to stay engaged and learn and grow that muscle so that you can become free because you've got the confidence.
Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you sharing your message, and just I'm grateful to have you, man.
Thanks, John. I appreciate you having me.
Don't forget to download your free copy of the investment tracker. It allows you to track up to 5 investments, compare sponsors, markets, and most importantly, projected versus actual returns. To get your copy, go to www.projectedreturns.com. PI listeners, thank you for listening. As always, we hope this was the best resource for your investment strategy, but also the best use of your time. Remember, if this episode helps you, you can help us by leaving a review on iTunes. I hope you feel compelled enough to share it with someone you think this would resonate with as well. As much as it pains us to leave you, but you know what time it is. Time to go put this into practice. Till the next time we meet, happy investing. PI listeners, I'm grateful for your time and I appreciate you for listening. It would mean the world to me if you went to iTunes and left a rating and written review. Let me know how you feel about the show. It really makes a big difference with getting the podcast out there. Don't forget about our Facebook group, where all of our guests are members of. I'll be there to answer any of your questions, or even questions you might have for future guests. Subscribe so you can get the latest episodes and our fan favorite quick hitters. Finally, I want to keep you updated, so head over to johnfortes.com and sign up for the newsletter. If you're interested in partnering with me, sign up on the contact page so you can talk to me directly. I look forward to connecting with you. Happy investing.